fantastic new polysynth, the Novation Summit. Summit is a 16-voice polyphonic synthesizer. It's based around the same architecture, synthesizer architecture, as the Peak synthesizer that we released a couple of years ago, with a few nice tweaks as well. And in actual fact, we have essentially two of those Peak synths directly inside the keyboard here as well. So it's based on a 61-note keybed, really great feeling keybed. And the keybed is actually the same one that we've used in the SL Mark III as well. But I have to say that with the metal chassis here, with the build on the Summit, the keys feel really, really nicely. They've just got a really good feeling, really nice and kind of just sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe just sort of tight. They feel really nice and tight. But as I mentioned, you know, there are essentially two Peak synth engines inside here, and we can take a quick look at that. So here I'm just playing a nice sort of single patch, and if I just latch on here, we can use a Ball 16 voices, or I could go into my voice mode here and turn on Unison. We can go up to an 8-voice Unison. So, or alternatively, if we don't want to just work with a single patch and we want to actually start to maybe layer patches together or use the keyboard to play two separate sounds at the same time, we can easily switch into our multi-mode. When we go into multi, we access the true bitambrality, the two synthesizer engines inside here, and we have three kind of modes. So this is a layer patch. We can see here on the active voice section that I'm actually playing both of those voices. If I want to make some changes to the sound, I'm currently controlling what we call part A. So there's opening the filter on part A. I close that down, we'll go to part B, and now I can start to play and take control of that particular part. So this is a layering two individual patches on top of each other. But if I go to, let's see if I can find a split. Yeah, here we go. Here's a nice split thing. So down here, I've got part A, just running. That's on a single voice thing. Well, let's latch that on. And now if I move up above C3, I can now play a second part. So I can actually play two different parts at the same time. So the split is essentially just taking the keyboard and splitting it into two distinct areas, one part being controlled by one part of the keyboard, another part being controlled by the other. To change the split point is really easy, just press split, hold the split button, and press the key that you want. And so now here, from this point on, is part B, and below is going to play part A. Finally, in the bitambral mode, we have dual, and dual is basically really splitting this into two separate synthesizers. So I'm just going to find a patch. Okay, we'll split into dual, and now when I'm set to A, I'm only going to play part A. If I go to part B, I'm only going to play part B. So we've got two very independent synthesizers at this point, and a really nice thing is if you have a sequencer, you can fire your sequences in and both parts can sit on different MIDI channels, so you can effectively use it as two very powerful 8-voice polysynths. So that's the bitambrality aspect of the synthesizer. Some of the other features that we've got are some of the controls that do exist in the Peak synth engine, but on the Summit synthesizer, we really want this to be a nice performance instrument, so we pulled them into the top panel. So for example, the arpeggiator controls are here up on the top panel. These on the Peak are based in the menu, but here on the Summit are directly available in front of me. Moving across, these controls are identical to the Peak, the oscillator section here, and of course the oscillators are a really powerful part of the Peak engine and the Summit engine. They're based around an FPGA chip that we're using, but it's important to say that with the FPGA chip, although it's a very, very powerful processor and indeed can achieve masses of voices and oscillators, our aim with the FP, by using this technology, the FPGA technology, is to really get the best possible quality out of the digitally generated oscillators. Of course, we have 3 oscillators. It's a 16-voice polysynth. That's quite a lot of oscillators already. And as I say, the real kind of focus for that sort of technology is focused on that high quality, the high resolution of these oscillators. Now moving over here, we've got a nice set of controls that again are new on the Summit. These are controls for the FM section of the synth engine. So if I'm going to go to a single patch and initialize it. So here we go. I'm going to go to a sine wave here. Nice sine there. But instantly I've got my FM control, and already it's connecting oscillator 3 down here to oscillator 1. So this control, we can do this of course in the Peak engine as well, but in order to do that I need to go to the mod matrix and dial it in there. But by virtue of the fact of having them directly in front of me on the top panel, this really opens up a lot more kind of possibilities for the sound design inside. And these pots have 3 different functions. They can be a manual pot, but at the same time it can also be a modulation envelope to a mount control as well. In addition to that, it can also be, again at the same time, an LFO2 amount for the FM frequency modulation. So just from one single pot here and a single sine wave, we've got a heck of a lot of sculpting and shaping that we're able to do with the sound as well. Then we've got our mixer and into the filter. Now the filter is an interesting one because this has had, let's say, an upgrade if you like. Again, it's the same filter as the Peak, but we've added some extra functionality to it. So we have low pass, band pass, high pass, but then we tap down and we go here. Well, it's labelled more on this. This is an early prototype version. I think it will read dual or something along those lines on the final production unit. But when we go to more here, we open up a menu over here, and this is quite interesting because effectively there are 2 filters inside of here, which is set to 12 dB per octave. When they're combined together, that gives us 24 dB per octave for our single low pass, band pass and high pass filtering. But if we go to the dual, then effectively we can separate those 2 filters out. And indeed on the menu here, you'll see that we have a filter frequency separation. So I can add additional separation to the filter blocks and push them further apart. And here we have a number of different combinations of filtering that we can combine. So we have serial, low pass into high pass, low pass into band pass, high pass into band pass. And then when we see a plus sign, we're now into parallel filtering as well, so effectively having dual filters. So again, the filter side here is the same filter as the Peak, but on the Summit we're able to actually treat that filter kind of architecture slightly differently and split them out to give us even more filtering flavors. Over this side, we've then got our envelope controls with longer faders and into the effects processors at the end here. And in addition, it's worth mentioning that we've also put a panel control here for the LFO 3 and 4. LFO 3 and 4 were added into the Peak synth engine in 1.2 in the firmware update that we did for that. And of course, on the Peak, we didn't really have an extra pot, or we couldn't really put an extra pot on there with a firmware update. But here on Summit, of course, we do have the ability to actually cater for that already here. And then finally, we go into our effects. These are some stunning stereo digital effects over here. Reverb, delay, and chorus. I'm particularly fond of the reverb itself. It's a really nice sounding thing. So, in terms of the architecture, we have our FPGA-generated oscillators running through into true analog filtering and distortion. And then back into the digital world to access the wonderful sounding digital effects. The final thing I'll mention is that the connectivity on the back also really increases the power of the Summit. We have 4 separate outputs for the synthesizer, and we can actually send out the 2 separate synth engines out to 2 separate mixing channels. Or indeed we can combine the synthesizers to come out dry of one output, and maybe the effects to come out wet, as effects would, out to the second output. But equally, another fascinating thing is we've got a stereo audio input as well. And what's really nice with the stereo audio input is that we can pass it directly through these really wonderful effects. we can actually enter the effects just before the effects, or indeed we can actually run it into the filter. And at this point, when it becomes a filter, it runs through the filter, it becomes a voice, so it's summed to mono, passes through the analog filtering, and then goes back out into the stereo world through the effects as well. So that's a good look at the Summit. It's a huge synthesizer, 16 voices, bitimbral, new filter design based on the peak filter, and yeah, a wonderful machine. Thank you very much for watching.